What's up everyone, and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Dustin Poirier changing course and accepting the fight against Colby Covington. Dustin Poirier made it very clear he doesn't hate anyone, but he really dislikes Colby Covington. The two spent a lot of time training at the same gym in American Top Team for several years, and while the two do know each other quite well, it's fair to say that the two don't see eye to eye. Colby has made a lot of disparaging remarks, not only about Poirier as a person and a fighter, but also about his family, calling his wife a Jezebel, as well as mentioning Poirier's kids. The last time Poirier fought was against Charles Oliveira for the lightweight title last December. He lost that fight via submission, but he remains high atop the lightweight rankings and is certainly in the mix to fight some of the top names. Whenever he was asked if he would fight Colby, Poirier stated,
"No, I'll never fight Colby in an octagon. If I fight Colby, we're both going to jail. I'm going to jail. I'm not going to fight him in the octagon. He's not making money off of my career and what I've done."
Now, Poirier is saying he's accepted a fight against Colby, but by the sound of it, it looks like this is the only fight they're offering him. And while he's not keen to accept it, he also doesn't want to be left on the shelf for a whole year and be inactive. This is what he stated to Ariel Helwani about all the talk of a Colby Covington fight.
It was either wait to the end of the year and fight, for a number one contender at lightweight, or fight July against him, and that was the name that they gave me. So I'm like, that's not a call out of him. I'm not going out of my way. I don't want to fight the guy. I don't want him profiting anything off of me. But if they're not going to give me a fight until the end of the year, and this is what you're giving me, I got to fight. I got to do what I got to do.
What do you think about a Poirier-Covington matchup? And who do you think would win this fight? Tony Ferguson says he would have retired if he didn't have a good first round at UFC 274. There was a real possibility that Tony Ferguson could have walked away from fighting following his loss to Michael Chandler over a week ago at UFC 274 in Phoenix, Arizona. Ferguson looked good in the fight, especially in the first round, going tit for tat with Chandler. It wasn't until early in the second round that Chandler knocked Ferguson out with a well-timed and well-placed front kick to the face. The strike left Ferguson unconscious on the canvas, and while it was the first time he was knocked out in his career, El Cucuy does see some silver lining in the whole thing. In a recent interview with the boys from Submission Radio, Ferguson was relaxed and honest about what he thought of the whole thing. Case in point, this is what he stated concerning the big R word.
I had to go back and I talked to my dad, I talked to my coaches, and I said, if I knew that I didn't have the gumption or the will to want to go anymore, if I didn't do good in that first round, I would have called it quits. I would have said, this, I'm retiring. You know what I mean? I'll go find something different. I'll coach everybody to be at this high level, and that's it. But when I went back and I watched the fight, and I remember reviewing everything, it was like something happened. Something clicked in me, man.
The loss extends Ferguson's losing streak to 4 straight fights, which began when he lost his #1 contender status to Justin Gaethje in May of 2020. But the former interim title holder is optimistic that he can make another run at the 155-pound strap. Who do you think is a good next fight for Ferguson? Don't forget to take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the MMA Zone to stay up to date on the latest fight news. Gregor Gillespie removed from the UFC rankings over inactivity. Gregor the Gift Gillespie was removed from the UFC lightweight rankings and is back to being an unranked fighter. He hasn't fought since May of last year when he beat Carlos Diego Ferreira by a TKO in the second round. He says inactivity is the reason he's not ranked anymore. In a recent long social media post, this is what he said. "Guys, I'm still in the UFC. Relax, I'll explain. 1. I'm removed from the rankings, not from the organization. Fighters are removed from rankings when inactive for a period of time, which I'm gathering is 12 months. 2. I'm not going anywhere, rankings or not. I love the UFC, and contrary to what the haters say about them, the UFC has always been more than good to me. Pay is great, everything's super organized. The follow-up after from medical staff is unbelievable. 100% class act, top of the food chain. It is not their fault I have not had a fight. They have offered me plenty of fights in the last year. I've accepted any and all of them against guys who were ranked ahead of me, outside of the very short notice ones like 4 to 8 days. And conversely, I've obviously turned down all the ones of the guys ranked behind me. I'm on a mission to fight the top guys with the lowest number next to their name and get towards that belt. And fighting guys who are ranked behind me isn't the way to do that. But I also understand sitting for a long period of time isn't either. 3. I am and have been patiently waiting for the right fight, one that is going to push me toward the belt. Since Ferguson turned down like 100 times last year, since Mikey Chandler didn't seem too interested in fighting me when I brought it up, and since RDA just turned down the fight against me, which I accepted by the way, I guess Beneil Dariush will have to do. I know you're banged up and recovering, big dog, so just give me 8 weeks heads up and let's do the thing. P.S. RDA Chandler, offer always stands. RDA was cool with fighting me on 4 days notice when I was literally on a mountain 7 hours away from home when he needed a last second replacement. But when just offered a fight with me since then, where I would have a fight camp, he straight up said no. Long story short, removed from rankings, not from the UFC. Well, Gillespie was pretty honest in his assessment here on the thought process of accepting and denying a fight and the consequences for inactivity. It's no secret that he's been calling out fighters ahead of him in the UFC rankings. At the same time, there's also an argument to be made that his own logic is being used against him. If he's not going to accept fights against guys ranked below him, why would guys ranked above him accept fights against him? Gillespie is 14-1. His only loss was to Kevin Lee in a knockout back in 2019. He's a big threat on the ground, being a former NCAA Division I national champion and also a 4-time NCAA Division I All-American. He's also got some power behind his hands, with half his wins coming by knockout or TKO. At the end of his message, he also took a parting shot against Rafael dos Anjos, as the two were in talks to fight each other briefly after Rafael Fiziev had to drop out of his scheduled bout against the Brazilian earlier this year. Ultimately, RDA took on Renato Moicano and beat his countryman via decision after going 25 minutes. What do you think about Gillespie's statements here? Ashley Evans-Smith suspended over steroids. UFC women's bantamweight fighter Ashley Evans-Smith is being slapped with a 14-month suspension by USADA after she tested positive for a banned substance, according to the organization. In a statement, this is what USADA said. During an investigation into the circumstances of the case, Evans-Smith provided evidence, including medical records, indicating that a physician incorrectly prescribed DHEA to her. As such, USADA determined that Evans-Smith's degree of fault was diminished and that she should receive a reduced period of ineligibility. She also received a reduction for her full and complete cooperation. The whole thing is due to out-of-competition testing, since Evans-Smith hasn't really fought since losing to Norma Dumont in November 2020. The 34-year-old Evans-Smith is saying that she took a steroid unknowingly, as it was incorrectly prescribed by a doctor. She won't be able to compete in the octagon until early March 2023. What do you think about Evans-Smith's suspension? Jimmy Smith speaks on why he left MMA commentary to join the WWE. For 7 years, MMA commentator Jimmy Smith was the voice of Bellator, the second biggest cage fight promotion after the UFC. Then, he signed a deal with the UFC in January 2018, but after refusing to re-sign with them, he changed course and joined the WWE commentary team in May of 2021, now serving as one of the 3 commentators on Monday Night Raw, doing play-by-play. For some, the decision was a head-scratcher. Smith was known as a great commentator during MMA fights and was looked as someone who could potentially be a bigger part of the UFC broadcasts when the pandemic hit. But now, in a recent episode of his podcast, Unlocking the Cage, Smith relayed why he made the decision to jump ship and join the WWE instead. In fact, he said it in a way that also included why fighters would think the same way. This is what he stated. The UFC can only go, here's 3 fights. If you lose, that's all over. Once Vince says, you're our guy, here you go. First of all, that first contract is going to be worth a lot more money than the UFC's contract. Number 2, Vince McMahon, because of his faith in you, or whatever it is, can give you all the opportunity in the world to fulfill that destiny. Dana White in UFC, because of the nature of it not being predetermined, cannot do that. I would sign with WWE. While the UFC is a big sports entity that has a lot of room to grow and certainly is one of the most well-known, the WWE does massive numbers in almost every other way possible, from the salary to the views to longevity of the whole thing. It's no wonder why some guys, from commentators to fighters, choose to go with the WWE than the UFC. Still, while the premier professional wrestling organization brings in the big bucks, fighters choosing the UFC over the WWE are looking for sports glory and more. What do you think about Smith's comments here? Today's video was packed with some juicy stories from the fight world. What are your thoughts about what's going on in MMA? Don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to the MMA Zone to see more videos just like this. See you next time.